Uachtarán an cógóil Europach is uachtarán clois na hilscile blá clia mahan héan agus san ma bhean céile tó fircinóchas ar an féilih so gur míle máach I hing gutsin as an bhóilte críúil sin. May I in the first instance say that I have a great pleasure to be here. I begin in Irish not only because, of course, of the presence of Micheann Cora, my old friend Liam Doherty here, but also the first President of Ireland, Douglas de Hiada, 120 years ago, chaired a meeting of Conradh na Gaeilge, which at that time was setting about what we called Glúiseacht Bheocha na Gaeilge, the movement to restore the Irish language. The effects of famine and immigration had reduced the speaking of Irish language to the point of great danger, where it was spoken by about 5% of children under 10 years of age. And I think that as the 9th President of Ireland, I am pleased to be able to tell you that Irish is spoken every day in Áras and Uachtarán, and I'm very pleased about that, and it is part of my commitment as Uachtarán here and the President of Ireland to make 2013 a special year in which we will be encouraging everybody to make a Éireach special to Cuireann Gaeilge Cararaig. Iad sanna will beagán Gaeilge gan níos mó all béidir iad sanna will Gaeilge líofacha úsáidar ó Choidibh Gominic. So getting to the business for which I'm here, indeed it is true that I have been a student abroad. It was an extraordinary experience, I have to tell you. I was in my 20s when I was one of the very first Irish students to go to Indiana University in Bloomington, Indiana. I went on from there, I remember, it was a very interesting time for a foreign student to be in the United States. I was a student, postgraduate student in sociology at the time of the Vietnam War. And I used the experience as well, not just to realize the enormous differences between different parts of the United States. I was, after all, in that land between the rivers, Willie Nelson country. And much later, I came back from there to have another experience of studying abroad, and that was in the Department of Social Anthropology at Manchester University. For those of you who are interested in what that experience is like, I have just recently been there giving a lecture at Manchester University just 2 weeks ago. But at that time, at the end of the 1960s, how our world changes was very clear. British anthropology had either left or been sent home from Africa, and those who were in the Rhodes Livingston Institute were now, instead of studying the Nuer and the Xande and the Xhosa and the Barotse, were in fact studying their own people in cities. And I again was one of the very first Irish students that they had experienced in a doctoral program, and they would occasionally ask me, you know, at the anthropology seminar on a Wednesday afternoon, sometime you must tell us about your own people. So I have. I am a very experienced foreign student abroad. I should tell you as well that I want to just congratulate everybody, and as President of Ireland, I'm so delighted to hear that the organisation has worked so well and that you're being welcomed with such efficiency and cordiality. I congratulate everyone involved in the organisation of the forum, including the staff led by President CEO Brian Whelan, the Conference Committee, the co-sponsors from the 6 other European Union countries, and the host institution, University College Galway, Dublin. Now, I'm beginning. University College Galway, which became National University of Ireland Galway, is where I spent nearly 20 years teaching sociology and political science myself. And Professor Brady and I know, he knows the high respect I have for University College Galway. But turning to my theme here, you have a theme for your conference, Reinventing the European Experience, Culture, Politics, and Diversity in US Education Abroad. I think this is an exciting theme. It's a fascinating theme. And I looked at the program you have, the busy schedule of addressing topics such as the development of an ethical code to govern learning abroad programs, ways to maximize a young learner's integration within their host culture, and really practical programs to support learners abroad who experience mental health difficulties. So as a world leader, as you have just been described, in setting quality standards for studying abroad, your deliberations are of great interest to all in the higher education sector. I'm delighted that the Forum has chosen to hold its very first conference outside of the United States, here in Ireland. And I think that that is a reflection of the continuing and growing popularity of Ireland as a destination for United States students, but a testament to the centuries of old and strong relationships between our two nations. I myself taught students from the United States at, indeed, University College Galway, now National University of Ireland, Galway. And it was a great experience. I also was very interested myself in seeing the experience of African students studying anthropology at Manchester University, trying to fit in, as it were. Remember, they would have, say, in conversation, I have all my field material, but I am looking for a theoretical framework. In the same way as you might say, I am looking for a pram. And that was the story, of course, of the social sciences. It has been the story in this century of the social sciences, where people take material and insights from their own people and they fit it into the theoretical models of others. One of the people who studied with me at Indiana was Orlando Falls-Borda, who wrote a seminal article on the ideological classes of North Americans studying South America. I've also visited South America, and I've looked at their students in the United States. They were some of my closest friends. The United States itself, I have to tell you, I say as President of Ireland, we're enormously indebted for significant scholarship. I was recently speaking in New York at the Association of Irish Historical Studies about the debt we owe for the post-famine studies, particularly the later 19th century studies, to American scholarship. And it's something that I want to say is very important. The Irish connection with the United States is extraordinary. During the first of two major periods of immigration in the 19th century, 250,000 people left Ireland for North America. They're a very interesting group because they are described by my colleague Garrett O'Tuig as Protestant and prudent. They were skilled people who, for many of them, who could, of course, afford to pay the passage. They were of Scottish descent, and they are probably the origins of the 3.5 million Americans who claim Scots-Irish ancestry in the American census. They were skilled, as I have said, and the second wave, the major wave of immigration, is associated with, of course, the Gorta Mór, or the names we call it, reveal, I think, the difficulty we have of coming to terms with such a loss of life as the Great Famine. Between 1846 and 1900, approximately just under 3 million predominantly Catholic Irish immigrated to America. And they are very interesting because when they wave, their wave collides with the previous wave. The first wave before the famine would have made it into the business sector of cities like Boston. The second wave would be people who collided with that wave, and you find them quickly scattering throughout the United States. I was speaking about these in Faneuil Hall in Boston just a while ago. I think as well today, over 36 million United States residents claim Irish ancestry. But I think it's important to say in an educational institution such as this, that the migrants pre-famine or post-famine, they attached an enormous importance to education. The former using it as an entry point into the business sector, and the latter using it as an entry point into practically all of the public services in the United States. So the bond between Ireland and the United States is rooted in history. It is the history of our origins, the history of the destination, and including, I think, in the case of the United States, an important part of their historical experience of breaking the colonial link. And indeed, as well as that, between both, there is perhaps the often hidden history of migrants and migration. Our relationship is a relationship which is constantly renewed by a host of circular migrations and interactions encompassing people-to-people exchange, education, culture, the arts, trade, business, and tourism. The American faculty and students who come to Ireland, they form a crucial part of a complex, modern, mutually beneficial relationship. I spent many years, as I have said, myself involved in that vortex of lecturing in sociology and human rights, as you have mentioned, over those years. And I often recall, I'm still in touch with some of the students that I had the pleasure of teaching. Europe remains the most popular destination for United States students, with over half of all United States study abroad students choosing to study in a European country in 2010. And we in Ireland are delighted that Ireland continues to be a top 10 destination for American students studying abroad. There are admirably strong institutional and professional connections which have developed and which underpin the experience of students studying abroad here in Ireland. I think as well for young people about the experience itself. I've made some references to my own remembered experience, but for young people, I think that I meet now, young people from the United States studying in Ireland that I have spoken about on the radio is experiencing a very different kind of world. And I detect from them an interest in authenticity of their lives and of their times. As Charles Taylor would say, it is a search for authenticity. Their student experience must not only take account of history, but it must prepare them for the future and their lives in a rapidly changing world. So studying in Europe at a time of immense global change presents a challenge to what has been inherited as not only one's own culture, but also what has been received as versions of the other in general, and the European other in particular. There's an obvious strength, in our shared experiences, and these can build on the differing and colliding traditions which make the experience of studying abroad all the more exciting and stimulating for a young student. There have been attempts at defining the difference. The Pew and Research Centre in its spring 2010 survey of cultural attitudes called On the American Western European Values Gap, which addressed the issue of how do Americans and Europeans differ. And it put it as follows. Most notably, Americans are more individualistic and are less supportive of a strong safety net than are the publics of Britain, France, Germany, and Spain. Americans are also considerably more religious than Western Europeans and are more socially conservative with respect to homosexuality. Well, I think it was an extraordinarily brave person who wrote such a summary in such general terms. But be that as it may, I suggest that as a theoretical sociologist, I feel myself it was an interesting summary. But in addition to the challenge of learning within a new cultural context, it is a real challenge studying in Europe. Europe offers a unique opportunity in the field of political education. The European Union itself, and when one speaks about Europe and European, that is a space of contestation in the discourse now, and all of what it includes. No more than I suggest, the space of the United States is a space of contestation in terms of its inclusive themes. European Union integration and enlargement has been the most ambitious experiment in international cooperation, democratization, and peace that has existed in modern times. And this we were all reminded of when a Nobel Peace Prize was conferred on the Union. But Europe is itself today in the throes of uncertainty. And as scholars, I'm very interested by we must be facing the challenges that are there in defining Europe, all of our Europe. And I think in the same way as facing the challenge of defining our responsibilities in a fragile planet. But I think in many ways, this question of Europe too, is that Europe has a memory that it sometimes is anxious to forget. There is a very valuable new work called From the Ruins of Empire. There are those in many ways who would like to be amnesic about the consequences of their empire globally, but they must come to terms and be able to place their narrative alongside those who on the receiving side of empire have not forgotten the experience. And Ireland in between has a unique position. As Europe in the throes of uncertainty, how it defines itself, how does it wish to be defined, that is a matter that we are in the midst of debating at the present time. And for students who come from abroad to study in Europe will have the experience of being part of that debate. Ireland, as I've said, is somewhat unique in that it has a history of sending its people to work in the service of imperial armies all over the world. But itself as a nation, it did not carry an imperialistic impulse or project. I think that should make it attractive for many people who want to be both European and at the same time be able to be the holders of an emancipatory vision or respect an emancipatory effort in history. Europe as a project is in the making, and students from abroad can be part of that making. And I believe too that the United States and the American continent generally, South America is in the course of the most extraordinary and I believe hopeful change. But the continent of America itself, I regard, be it in terms of the projects of being plural, inclusive, libertarian, it also is in the project of making. So studying this process within such a context offers students a tremendous opportunity to learn from and contribute to the advancement of humanity, international development and cooperation, and an opportunity to develop an awareness of the necessity of lodging an ethical consciousness in the globalization project, to question old certainties and things taken for granted that were generalizations. Today, as Europe and the United States continue to struggle with ongoing recession, it is all the more important that our students and future leaders develop the capacity to critique, challenge, and initiate alternatives of an economic and political policy kind that can strengthen global cohesion, contribute to responsible and sustainable development on our planet. And I think we have to, the challenge in philosophy, for example, is to realize that the economy, so-called, or the global economy, is not a natural entity, but something that has been constructed and lodged in a matrix of institutions, and that the relationship between such institutions is an exercise in power itself. Studying in Europe allows the student an opportunity to be enriched by Europe's diversity, to experience the interaction of inherited tradition in the atmosphere of a technologically driven modernity, to encounter, as I have said, the overlapping and the collision too of local, national, European and global identities and cultures, and the complex international political and economic dynamics that arise from these. These are themes that will define the modern Europe, but which are also necessary for the understanding of our interconnected and globalized world. And preparing students to understand and thrive in this new world, indeed to enable them to help shape it, is one of the key challenges to our modern education systems. This is the changing global context in which students will seek to make decisions where to study. US study abroad providers now offer a wider choice of competing locations that offer to support United States students in developing their own skills and for participation in society and in an increasingly globalized labor market. In the midst of such great technological and social changes, the relationship between America and Europe continues to be a vital one, and young Americans will continue to derive huge benefit from their time studying here. US students will find the space and time and opportunity in Ireland, and indeed across Europe, this Europe we are making together, to broaden their life horizons and learning. Here in Ireland, we have been noted at times for the beauty of our landscape and the splendid weather we have. But also at times, we are people who have mastered contradictions for the friendliness of our people. I recall in Connemara somebody said to me, we're fierce friendly, aren't we? Well, but also I think as well for culture, of our great writers, poets, artists, musicians and actors. I think when one thinks about the achievement of Ireland, to in fact actually in the 19th century, to embrace a new vernacular language that was made necessary by economic circumstances and imposed by law, to then take that language and later capture it and change it was an incredible national achievement. And then, as it were, to achieve 4 Nobel Prizes in the language within 50 years is, I think, test of the creativity and adaptability of an Irish people with unfinished stories. We're inclined to think that creativity that I have just described is something that exists in the cultural sense. James Joyce, the innovator, for example, who revolutionized the English language, breaking the mold of the novel. But innovation, or creativity as I prefer to call it, is a characteristic of Irish history across all endeavours. Ireland's economic culture is strong, and the same creativity and imagination that is the hallmark of Irish culture is driving in all areas, groundbreaking research in science and technology. Dublin, which is one of only 5 UNESCO cities of literature, is this year also, and I had the privilege of speaking at its opening, the European City of Science, showing that the originality and ingenuity of the Irish mind are just as successful when turned towards the sciences as to the arts, and really at their best, I say, in the presence of a president of a university, when what happens in the interstices are respected. So while we are rightly proud of Shaw and Yeats and Beckett and Heaney, when Nobel laureates in literature are mentioned, we must also always remember Ernest Walton, born in Dungarvan, joint developer of the first particle accelerator that split the atom in 1931, or William Rowan Hamilton in mathematics, Robert Boyle in chemistry, astronomer Agnes Mary Clerk, and John Tyndall in light physics. They are also an important part of the Irish mind, as are so many contemporary Irish scientists, technologists and innovators, many of whom teach, research and work in the United States, and some in both the United States and Ireland. So Irish creativity can have many manifestations. It may be a poem or a painting, but also a new economic model. It may be a medical treatment or nanoplastic composite, or it may be, as I hope will be more and more, a treatise like that of the young philosopher Alan Fives on ethics. Ireland has a tradition then of education. It draws on something that goes back over 1,000 years to our ancient monasteries, one that was continued by people who abroad played a crucial role in educating millions of people around the world, including those in the poorest corners of the earth. Ireland today, and I'm coming to the end, has the highest participation rate in higher education in the European Union. We sometimes, on a day of the budget, when people are saying they might be pessimistic, I also have to say that the good news is, and I repeat, Ireland has the highest participation rate in higher education in the European Union, the second highest in the OECD, and it is now one of the top 20 research nations in the world, a global leader in 18 disciplines, including first in the world of molecular genetics and genomics. Dublin itself is ranked number 1 in the world for human capital, a measure which includes the quality of our education, the mindset of our people, and the ease and openness of employing foreign nationals. And the city is ranked as one of the top 10 cities in the world to be a student by the International Student Service. Anyway, chun críocha leis an méid rám, chun críocha leis an oscailt ifigiúil seo. I must say that overseas study enables us to change how we perceive ourselves, allows us to position our roles and our actions in a global context. In Europe, no initiative has been more successful at encouraging a shared European outlook, a Europe of citizens among young people than the Erasmus mobility program, the European Union Study Abroad. Study abroad allows young people to develop their natural energy, their talent and creativity through intercultural experience. So may I commend you all on the vital role which all of you in this room play in making study abroad such a successful and growing part of the American and European educational experience, but also allow me to stress its global contribution. I conclude with some words associated with a great European, Leonardo da Vinci. In his phrase, ancora imparum, it is associated with Da Vinci, meaning I am still learning. Leonardo da Vinci learned through curiosity, through study, through experimental creativity, through openness to humanity, through trial and error and through vision. And I think that is a great inspiration for the kind of Europe that we wish to recover and create beyond any narrow issues of stability of a currency. I am heartened to see that the Forum Education is following a model such as that of Da Vinci, still learning, still curious, and creative. Tá súlam go méid tara guid aibre sa cúpla láiste roin, agus go méid loch séhir le fálagiv as na bun tá stí iad agus súla social agus persanta, a hioki gidro nalti da var. May I wish that your work over the next few days will be most fruitful, and that you will be rewarded, as we all will, with the educational, social, and personal benefits that this will bring to your students. Garamira Mahagi, thank you.